hearing loop, which is available in the council chamber. Staff members are able to assist you with this at any time during the meeting. Please remain quiet in the gallery so that everyone can hear the meeting. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I would also like to remind members of the public watching the live stream that a copy of the agenda and information explaining council's meetings can be found on the council website. Tonight you will see that we have 9 reports in open council and 0 in closed council, a transparency rate of 100%. Reading of the prayer. Please stand as I call upon Pastor Graham Shand from Aspire Church to read the prayer.
Let's pray. Gracious God, we honour and recognise your presence in this place tonight. We pray that you will grant wisdom as decisions are made, that they would be directed by you, that the vision for the remaining growth areas in the city and also Hampton Park, as they are considered, they will indeed contribute towards the creation of Australia's most livable city, that as it grows in size, it will also grow in health and vitality. We thank you for the provision of finance and resources and pray that you will continue to provide all that is needed for this season ahead. We commit tonight's meeting of the council into your hands. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Shand. Please remain standing as I call upon Ms. Lisby Lapierre from the Casey Multi-Faith Network to read the faith statement. Thank you so much. Please be seated. The City of Casey acknowledges that we are on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and pay respects to elders, past, present and future. Come up to the time of apologies. In the first instance, I would like to give apologies for Councillor Gary Rowe. He was here, but he's been called away for a family matter. He hopes to return, but for the moment he's an apology. I'd also like to advise that Councillor Gillich is on her way. She'll be here very soon. I'd also like to move a leave of absence. Can I do the two together? I think I can, can't I? A leave of absence for Councillor Wayne Smith. And we've got the dates up here. From the 4th of June to the 12th of July. I'm enjoying his partner Ina's Facebook updates about where they're travelling in Europe. It's absolutely fantastic. I think you've been following it too, haven't you, Councillor Rosario? Fantastic. No, lots of fun. So could I ask for a mover and a seconder to accept those? Moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Rosario. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Suspension of local law. Is there any items for us to call a suspension of local law? That being the case, I will move on. Confirmation of minutes. Could I please ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 21st of May, moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by, hello, Councillor Cristani, thank you. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Declaration of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest or personal interest that they would wish to declare? Interests must also be declared immediately before consideration of the item. No? Fantastic. Public question time. Ms Frost, are there any questions this evening?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we have received a number of questions tonight. First two questions are from Mr John Glazebrook. Mr Glazebrook, thank you for your questions. First question concerns Tully Allen land dispute. Will Casey Council now conduct an inquiry into a 2014 planning decision that could cost ratepayers many millions in a payout to developer Conan Proprietary Limited and ascertain exactly why Section 173 was waived? This question will be answered by the Manager, City Planning.
This matter is subject to Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal proceedings. As such, Council is unable to comment at this time.
Second question from Mr Glazebrook. What is Council doing to invest in the renewable energy project at Hazelwood or elsewhere in Victoria? And this question will be answered by Mr Michael Jansen.
Casey is moving to significantly increase its green power purchase and use of renewables. Currently, approximately 4.5% of Council's infrastructure is powered by renewable energy. Through an increase in rooftop solar installations and signing up to a 10-year power purchase agreement, we will increase this to 71% from July 2020. Casey also has 4 electric vehicles for staff use and offsets 100% of fleet emissions through Green Fleet. Casey will continue to investigate opportunities to reduce emissions and deliver cost-effective operations. By way of example, the landfill gas-to-energy facility at the closed Narre Warren landfill has operated for over 20 years and was the first of its kind in Victoria. Council is now participating in a group procurement for advanced waste processing technology to transition away from landfill in the southeast. While the technology has not yet been chosen, it will likely include recovery of materials and energy from waste.
Not to mention the electric waste truck. Thank you, Mr Glazebrook. Would you take your seat, please? We can address that later. Mr Glazebrook, would you please take your seat? Thank you. Right, Ms Frost.
Thank you. Our third question tonight concerns item 7.7 in the agenda, Buchanan Road, Berwick, and it's from Jodie and Cameron Dorrington. Thank you for your question. As this risk is clear and proven, wouldn't a capital works project to mitigate this risk provide a level of noticeable safety benefit to the community and further protect the council from liability if a fatality was to sadly occur? And this question will be answered by the Manager, City Design and Construction.
Thank you for the question. Each year, Council funds a number of capital works projects that address road safety risks across the 1,800 kilometres of local road network in Casey. These works typically involve sealing of gravel road shoulders and installation of guardrail on higher speed rural roads. The risk reduction benefit of these works is currently greater than the benefit of providing curb and channel in Buchanan Road. The crash statistics show that over the last 5 years there have been no reported casualty accidents in this section of Buchanan Road. The report that Council will consider at its meeting tonight is in relation to the proposed special charge scheme for the provision of curb and channel and footpath on the eastern side of Buchanan Road. The scheme was not supported by a majority of residents. Officers are able to further meet with residents to discuss their road safety concerns in this section of Buchanan Road.
Thank you. And our final question tonight from A. McCormick concerning Buchanan. Thank you for your question. Would the Council give consideration to include Buchanan Road infrastructure under the Capital Works program because of the extreme danger the road presents? And again, this question will be answered by the Manager, City Design and Construction.
This section of Buchanan Road between Inglis Road and Brisbane Street has a footpath located along the full length of the western side of the road. Pedestrians are able to avail themselves of this section of footpath. The crash statistics show that over the last 5 years there have been no reported casualty accidents in this section of Buchanan Road. Officers are able to further meet with residents to discuss their road safety concerns in this section of Buchanan Road.
Thank you. There are no further questions.
Thank you, Ms Frost. Thank you, Mr Griffin. Just as a courtesy, please know that if you're wanting further information to the answers to your questions, please feel free to contact our council officers during business hours. Officers' reports for consideration. Are there any items councillors wish to discuss? Councillor Cristani. Sorry? No. Item 7.1 perhaps?
Councillor Ablett.
Oh, Councillor Ablett.
Item 7.1, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for that. Okay, and Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Items 7.5 and 7.8, please.
Councillors, are there any other items you wish to withdraw? That's great. Are there, is there a mover and a seconder to adopt the recommendations listed in the officers' reports that have not been withdrawn for discussion? These being as follows: items 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.6, 7.7, 7.9. Moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Ablett. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. So we'd like to begin with the first withdrawn item. Councillor Ablett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation with one minor or major to us, I think, amendment, which is in part 3, which after the words remaining growth areas, I think they've already been added, and advocate for the fast tracking of inclusion of the remaining PSPs or precinct structure plans on the Victorian Planning Authority Works Program.
Great amendment. Thank you, Councillor Ablett. We've also got another amendment, and that's from Councillor Aziz, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ablett. I'm wondering, Madam Mayor, if you'd also entertain a further addendum to the recommendation, where basically we write in the same letter to say that the City of Casey would welcome the inclusion of provisions for Sorry.
Yep. So would that be number 5, do you think?
Yeah, as long as that's made clear that it's actually included in the same correspondence.
Oh, sure.
The inclusion of provisions for places of worship. In future strategic plans. As this is a central part of our vision for an inclusive city.
As an inclusive city?
As this is a central part of our vision for an inclusive city.
Councillor Aziz, could I suggest you put that the City of Casey, at the beginning of number 5, also included in that correspondence, comma, the City of Casey.
Okay, so go to the beginning of that part. So
Yep.
we say included in that correspondence, comma.
Included in
The City of Casey express that it will
Sorry,
welcome or ask.
just
Yeah,
just
okay.
give her a chance to. Included in that correspondence, comma, the City of Casey would welcome, not
Thank
will
you.
welcome.
Beautiful.
The City of Casey would welcome, and then
Lovely.
the rest can stay the same.
So moved by Councillor Ablett, seconded by Councillor Aziz.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce Councillor Ablett?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Aziz. Firstly, I'd like to thank officers for this report, and also the officers and you, Madam Mayor, for constantly keeping me up to speed with what was going on, and Mr Fitchett with this particular item when I was away ill, consulting with me, particularly Miss Kerry New, and also Jayden Mizzy when he was in an acting role. We had several long conversations about this particular item. Over the next coming years, the Victorian Planning Authority, or the VPA, will prepare 4 new precinct structure plans for the Casey growth area, which are Crossgell, Casey Field South Employment, Clyde South and Devon Meadows. The Victorian Planning Authority will consult with Council when they prepare these plans. The vision for remaining growth areas was prepared to strengthen our advocacy to the Victorian Planning Authority and ensure that we are all well positioned to proactively engage with them, other government agencies, developers and landowners during the preparation of these precinct structure plans. Council officers engaged with a broad group of stakeholders to prepare the vision statement. A workshop was held with over 50 industry representatives and experts from a variety of fields, including transport planning, economics, environment and design, to ensure that the vision statement would reflect best practice and innovation. The vision statement sets out Council's key planning directions and advocacy for messages to the 4 remaining precincts. It will help us to achieve our goal of becoming Australia's most livable city by balancing development, environment and community needs. Madam Mayor, I'd also like to state within the report, I believe this is a great footprint to start the process of getting these PSPs done. In the report it does state that might not state, I'm not sure, I didn't read it, but I didn't read that bit. The study, VPA, the Victorian Planning Authority, are doing a comprehensive study on the economic land needs of the southeast, and that includes Casey. So another report will come back to Council from officers once the findings of the VPA on economic land are produced and studied and digested, and we can make that information available to all colleagues. There is also another report coming out. I haven't seen it, but I was told today, and I promised that I'd get this report to officers on the need for these PSPs to be done, because by 2026 we'll run out of land not only for economic reasons but for residential reasons. So when I get that report, I'll hand that out, and that may well be part of the report that comes back to Council once we know the economic land and also the residential land, and also the land that Councillor Aziz has just described, also amongst other things open space, environmental requirements, mixed use, etc. So it's a real balancing act that we're going to perform. This map you see tonight is a starting point. If you remember back 12, 18 months ago, and I was talking to Graham Shand over dinner, we did write to the Victorian Planning Authority and to the Minister for Planning for some residential land around the Lighthouse Christian College, rather than having economic land and factories all around that. That is still our position, and that will be put forward to the VPA, and we see how we go with that, because the school's been there a long time, and if people can walk to schools, certainly makes sense. But it's a good starting position, and I look forward to working with the officers, my colleagues, and also the Victorian Planning Authority, and the next report, and taking this forward. And I just want to finish by saying I've asked for a timeline because these things can go on for 4, 5, 6 years. If we're not careful, the demand will be there and we won't be ready with the plans, and the land won't be available, and that would be an absolute diabolical situation. So I would be looking at around a 2-year window to get it all done within 2 years. Now I know the VPA are also working on a policy within their own organisation, a policy which says that they will complete PSPs within 2 years, particularly in fast-growing areas. So they obviously understand the need already, but a letter from us hopefully will trigger them to prioritise cases for remaining PSPs to be done on time, so they're ready when the demand hits in a couple of years' time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ablett. Just pause for a moment just to explain the items that weren't withdrawn have been passed without debate. So items like Buchanan Road, have actually been passed without debate. So if you feel that you want to follow that up tomorrow, please feel free. But for the moment, that won't be debated here in Council tonight. That is passed as per the recommendation. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions in relation to this matter? Because I'm going to go to Councillor Aziz because he's going to speak to his part of the amendment. Are there any questions at all? Is there any dissent? No dissent. Councillor Aziz, would you like to speak to that briefly?
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. Look, it's an amendment that came about as a result of some brief discussions with some faith leaders in our community, and in recognising the fact that we are a growing community, and the number of people that move into the city of Casey every week is on an astronomical trajectory. I think we've reached probably about 160 to 170 a week now, and many of these people look forward to having a place of worship that they can attend They're usually accustomed to attending a place of worship from the places that they've moved out of. And so because of our growth rate, I think it's really, really important that Casey is able to provision within its strategic planning an opportunity for us to identify places of worship without those residents necessarily having to jump through hoops to get the approval processes necessary to convert either existing community facilities or lean on other people to lend them their facilities, whether they be community or commercial. It's just an unacceptable situation. And I think in the recent election of the Morrison government, I think the Prime Minister has made a number of really important comments about the importance of faith for people. And certainly in many of the resilience workshops that I have attended, where they were discussing strategies of fighting depression and fighting isolation, particularly in the digital age, it was impressed upon us a number of times the importance of having some sort of belief system or faith as part of your life to keep you grounded, to keep you connected to other people, to keep you engaged with members of your community, and so on. And so in this age where I think the horrendous statistic, Madam Mayor, was that up to 6 men every day commit suicide in Australia. I don't know the figures on the number of women who commit suicide, but I know that one was particularly highlighted. But we've got to do everything we can as a city to facilitate opportunities for our residents to be more engaged and to have someone to talk to in times of need. And there'll be a notice of motion that I'm going to be proposing under urgent business that's related to community safety, again because of the, I can only call it as an epidemic that we're seeing in terms of attacks on residents, particularly women. But I think in terms of our strategic planning, we wouldn't be worth our salt as the municipal authority if we weren't provisioning for places of worship for our residents, particularly, as I said, that they shouldn't really have to scramble for them, and particularly given that our growth will show no sign of abating for at least a decade. So I think it's an important part of the addendum, and I thank Councillor Ablett for his indulgence in allowing me to contribute it to what we're debating tonight. And of course, Madam Mayor, I acknowledge your leadership in allowing Councillor Ablett's transformations as well as my addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz, and thank you, Councillor Ablett. Are there any other questions, or is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Moving on now to item 7.5, Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that in my name, please.
Moved by Councillor Rosario, seconded by Councillor Aziz. Is there any dissent? No? No, sorry. Wrong. Please introduce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Aziz, for your support. As part of Council's ongoing commitment to improving Hampton Park Central, the development plan for Hampton Park Central sets out an exciting vision for the centre, Madam Mayor. It provides certainty around investment and directs future public and private development in that space. The development plan was widely consulted with the community and landowners. Information sessions were held at Arthur Wren Hall and Hampton Park Community House. The community wanted to see improvements in amenity, landscaping, transport, and encouraging wider range of shops as well as activities in that space, Madam Mayor. Council listened to the community, and the final development plans include a high amenity main street through which goes through the precinct, Madam Mayor, and it improves the vehicular, which is the vehicles that drive through, as well as pedestrian connectivity. The plan also allows for more intensive development, such as more shops, offices, and housing built around a high-quality public space. Council is continuing work on the community precinct master plan, Madam Mayor, and that's one that's near and dear to both Councillor Smith and my heart, as that will be the heart of the Hampton Park community. in our opinion, which will guide renewal and development of the council facilities that we have currently there. So with that said, Madam Mayor, Hampton Park is on a journey of growth and evolution, and we have some exciting times ahead, and this plan will help us to get to that future that we envision, that we aspire for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rosario, and could I please commend you and Councillor Smith on the great work that you do in championing this, and also the great work of our council officers. Thank you so much, Ms New, and your team. Fabulous work and very exciting times ahead, that's for sure. Councillors, are there any questions? Is there any dissent? Oh, Councillor Flannery, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like to ask Councillor Rosario, with that development, it's the old shopping centre we're talking about, is that going to be for the housing? And if so, am I on the wrong track? Is it?
It's a small part of a much bigger picture.
Oh, well, yeah, my question was, is that with the housing development, how many units or how many townhouses do they expect to build there? That's all.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, for the question. It is a relevant one because we do have questions at the moment on a newly approved 5-storey development where the old Coles complex is. I'll let the officer speak to those details, but I will say that what we're moving today is a much larger piece of that very small piece of the puzzle, which is looking at not just that area, but all around Hampton Park as well, the key areas that really need to be uplifted. And we take a look at that from a very high level to bring all those pieces together to connect our community. But I will redirect that particular question on the development to our council officers for their comment.
Ms New.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, there has been an approval for a substantial office, commercial, retail and residential development on the former Coles site. And that development would have in the vicinity of about 100 dwellings proposed within it.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and well answered both yourself, Councillor.
If I can just add to that, by the way. And once again, what Councillor Flannery raises is a fair question because of the questions we're being asked. I've had a conversation with council officers around having some form of display